Max, the one to watch for the best in entertainment, now has live sports with the Bleacher Report sports add-on.
5, 4, 3, 2, I let one go.
Stream hundreds of select live games from MLB.
That's gonna go!
NBA, NHL, U.S. Soccer, and NCAA Men's March Madness.
We just see what we think we just saw!
And it's all included for a limited time with any Max subscription.
He got him!
After the promo period, add it for $9.99 a month. Base subscription required.
Need a holiday gift that will keep her sparkling all year long? Right now, Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, is offering 30% off select jewelry. With experts on hand 24/7 to provide guidance, you're sure to find the perfect piece. And now there's even more to love about shopping at BlueNile.com. For a limited time, get 36-month special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hello and welcome to the Serie A Chronicles podcast with me, Mina Rizuki, and as always joined by Nikki Bandini. We're going to round up what was a super exciting weekend. And let's just say some of the expectations we had have been thrown out the window. And I honestly don't know what's going on because there I was believing a little Salernitana. There I was, believing that maybe Inter have just lost it and Barella's just tired. And, things were all shaken up a little bit. But before we get into all of that, hello and welcome to you, listener, and hello and welcome to you, Nikki. How has your week been?
It's been a weird week, Mina. I think
I
it's
can
been
imagine.
a weird week for everyone, hasn't it? It's really hard to start a podcast about football in a week when there's like major international news going on. It's a bit heavy for our podcast about football, but I think we've just been agreeing before we started. Kind of a weird week to focus on things because there is news that's happening in the world that's a big deal. On an entirely personal, less sort of profound note, I've been back at my mum's this week, which is not a place I'm used to being in my late 30s. It's strange to spend like a full week back at your mum's. You sort of, do you know what it's like when you're sort of back with your parents? Like you instantly like revert in some ways to like your sort of childhood behaviors just because that's how you relate to your mum. And like,
what does that involve, Nikki? Are you like, where's my food? Tell me.
A little bit, like a little bit bratty, a little bit like, like I'm not doing anything. I'm not taking responsibility for things. I honestly haven't cooked in like a week and it's incredible. Like that's an incredible feeling to me to not cook in a week because I live on my own. And obviously in this pandemic, like there's been a lot of cooking for myself. And so just not doing that. And you feel yourself starting off, you're like really apologetic about it. Within a day, you're just like, this is me. I'll put my feet up. Someone can fan me with one of those giant leaves. Someone can bring grapes. That's been my week.
Can I come as well?
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I make sure that I'm close to my parents because I'm like one of those types of people who be like, yeah, like I've had a really long day at work, so do you have food? And then they'll just give me food. And I've sort of never really left that dynamic, if that makes sense. And it's really funny because I'm like I am the youngest in my family. And my sisters are quite a bit older than me, so because I was like an accident. So there's like 12 and 9 years between us.
You can't just say that.
And it's so funny when I watch them come home sometimes, and I'll be like, Mom. I'm just like, you're like 50. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's wrong with you people?
You never change, right? Like you never change. Like it doesn't matter how old you get. Like your parents are still like your parents, or your guardians, whatever relationship you have. The people who looked after you when you were a kid like you are always going to be a kid to them. Like that's the thing. Like no matter what you do, you're always going to be a kid to them. So even though like sometimes you fight against it a little bit, in the end, like they want you to be the kid, and you end up being like, well, actually, this is kind of easy in some ways. So you drift back into it.
Yeah, and that's all good and well. It's just that my dad, you know, when he opens the door, he'll be like to my sister, "You're fat." And then I'll be like, "Dad, you can't say this stuff, yeah?" Or he'll be like, "Oh, darling, you're a skeleton. You know, no man wants a skeleton." You'll be like, "Okay," or he'll just make all these judgments. And the thing is because he's just older now, we just think it's funny. And I'm thinking how much we used to take offense when we were younger, and now we just think he's, you know, this is just the way that he's going to be. He's just never going to get it, you know. But we do all fall back into place. Even my parents fall back into like their old habits, you know. And my poor mother's still cooking 5 different things because we all like different meals when we're all together. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, it kind of puts me off having my own children. But let's talk about this weekend, because the one thing that went according to at least my predictions, because I honestly did not see Salernitana get thrashed like that, not with Davide Nicola at, you know, the helm. I understood when it happened the first time round. I didn't expect it. But what did go to plan was perhaps my feelings on Napoli. And, you know, it was obviously the big game of the weekend. It was Napoli at home in the Maradona Stadium facing Milan. And this was about who was really going to win and put a serious foot forward when it comes to winning the title. And I thought this was excellent I don't know how you felt. Actually, let's talk about that in the first thing, because we obviously both read or watched or whatever it was, the press conferences before the match. And you know, you had Stefano Pioli being like, it really doesn't matter, you know, we'll win or lose, but we'll go on. And I don't think this will define anything. And then you had Spalletti like evoking Jesus Christ himself. Yeah, like the fire of Vesuvius. And which I have to say, like, it was really funny how everyone was like totally laughing about this afterwards, you know. But it was like, you know, oh, I don't know whether we'll have the blessing of Maradona. We will go down as immortals, you know. And it was like, wow, dude, you've really made this a huge match. And this is for a side that really struggles under pressure. You're piling it on. And I get that you're trying to teach them something, but I'm thinking maybe you should have gone down the Stefano Pioli route of it's just another game, you know? What did you think about that? And was that the difference?
I don't know, Mina. Am I being unfair on you? And I feel like you always want Napoli to be like, take responsibility, take this seriously, treat yourselves like title contenders, stop hiding behind things. I feel like on this podcast, sometimes they've been accused of not owning the moment and trying to live up to it. So I feel like, obviously, Luciano Spalletti, Serie A Chronicles listener, because why wouldn't you be? I mean, why wouldn't he? So obviously he was listening to our podcast and he heard that message and he thought, right, I'm going to get knocked if I don't tell them this game's important. So I'm going to tell them it's really important. I'm sure that's how it went down. He definitely did go all in. You've not oversold that. That is definitely how the conversation was pre-game. This conversation about immortals and forgotten forever. I just can't shake this image. And I know we've talked about it in the podcast, so people are going to have to excuse me, my obsession with this image that I've got now since reading Francesco Totti's book and interviewing Francesco Totti. But I can't shake this image I've got of Totti talking about Spalletti being pretty out there to the point of running down corridors naked, because it gives you this mental visual of a manager who will talk about immortality while running through a corridor nude. There's a lot going on in that image, and I can see it. Oh, it's a bit intense, to be clear. That's not how he delivered that speech to the press. He delivered that speech to the press wearing clothes. And I actually really like Spalletti, and I've been a fan of his, but in the end, I've sort of been trying to piece this together myself. Like, how much of this did he get the mental game wrong? I know that's a narrative, and I know like maybe there's something in it, but how much has he also just not got? How much has he just not got the tactical puzzle right at this point? Because in the end, I felt like Pioli made small changes that really changed this game a lot. He went to that midfield 3 or 4-1-4-1, however you want to call it, but with Tonali deeper, and then Kessie and Benacer pushing on and really shutting down Fabian Ruiz and Lobotka, and with Tonali deeper so you couldn't get the ball to Zielinski, and it worked. And I thought to myself, well, that's one-off game where Pioli's got it right. But I feel like for months I've been watching this Napoli team and thinking, you've got all these great attacking players, but it doesn't feel like a great attacking team. So actually, have you just not been finding the solution for ages to how to get the best out of those talents?
Well, yeah, I agree with you there. I'm just going to sort of make it clear to everyone. So basically, a lot of people have always said Pioli's become less and less unpredictable rather. And now we've started to understand how they play their football. And this is why they were not winning games against Salernitana, so on and so forth. So he decided to change it up and use his best three midfielders in Benacer, who was outstanding. I thought Benacer especially. Pioli and obviously Tonali. And Tonali was deep, played 4-1-4-1, changed it all up, and Giroud up front. This isn't a team that, for me, matches up to Napoli in terms of technique. And I thought the tactics were so perfectly spot on. And I wonder what Pioli can do when he does have like those great players, because when you've got like Salmakers on the, like your bench, and I mean, he has Leao and he has Giroud and Ibra, but again, two older players, and I don't want to take anything away from Giroud because he's fantastic, and obviously so is Ibrahimovic. But can you and they were playing with Kalulu at the back because they've had so many different injuries. What Pioli can do with this team is really something that is truly exceptional from a mental point of view, from a physical point of view, how to keep it tactically fresh all the time. He is somebody that just really pushes this team on. And this is a side that only played a few days ago against Inter in a huge, mentally exhausting matchup at Derby. And so to come here and do that against, Spalletti's Napoli, which has lots of time to prepare, and they should have been well rested. But I agree with you here. They did win the tactical battle, and you're just sitting there wondering, do Napoli know what they're doing? Do you think that because they've had changes, they lost Anguissa and they did lose Osimhen, that they haven't really found the best way to exploit some of the good things of their striker? Because I do think there's a reliance. Well, there was yesterday certainly a reliance on Politano and Insigne to do something, and they couldn't really do it, right? They were heavily pressed. And I feel like they kind of copied what Barcelona did and just not let Napoli come out. And you can see the fact that they don't have courage. And yet I still feel that there's some aspect of this that makes me think Napoli, if you bully them and if you harass them, and this is something I've seen in the last 3 seasons, they're not a team that will push through that. And that's what bothers me, because Milan do push through that. And I don't know whether it's because they're young and they feel and they believe in themselves, and because, Inter can do it because of Conte, and Juve can do it because they always have done it in the last 9 years. But Napoli have this weird thing where if you really come at them, they're sort of like Pjanic, like, okay, I don't know what to do now, Sorry, I always have to have a dig at Pjanic.
You just can't help it. It's Pjanic. It's always Pjanic's fault. Mina's at home. She's got like a little picture of Pjanic above her door, and every time she's angry about something, she just points to it and goes, "It's your fault."
And throw a dart.
It's going to spread mythology about you. I think there's so many layers I want to get into. Oh, there's too much to talk about this game. Because the Barcelona thing's really interesting, because I've heard people talk about that, and I think that unquestionably, I think Pioli learned some lessons from watching what Barcelona did to them. But you have to bear in mind that one thing that Barcelona did that Milan definitely didn't do is take the ball away from them. Barcelona obviously like to play with the ball. We know that about them. That was a big question going into those two legs. Barcelona took the ball away from them. Napoli never had it. But Napoli have the highest possession percentage of any team in Serie A through the season. In fact, I remember that came up when I was doing the live coverage of the Barcelona-Napoli game, because some people who were on the coverage with me who didn't follow Italian football so closely were really surprised by that, because Napoli couldn't seem to get hold of the ball. Milan didn't do that to them. Milan couldn't take the ball off them. But what they did do was, by having Kessie and Benacer push on so high, they let Napoli have the ball, but push their centre of gravity back into their own half, basically. So instead of having the ball where Napoli want to have it, which is ideally, I think, faffing around with it on the tre quarti in that 3/4 that we talked about last week, until they find an opening, they were doing all the faffing about in their own half. And then if you're doing it in your own half, what's your plan for transitioning from there to attacking? And in the end, I just felt like they didn't have one. And I think that's been, even in games when they have been able to get more up the pitch, a question for me is, you've obviously got Victor Osimhen at the top of this formation, and he's great. And when you do get the ball to Victor Osimhen, things happen. Even in this game, he should have had a penalty for me. I actually thought both were penalties. I thought that
did you?
It was a penalty on Benacer, and I thought it was a penalty on... Yeah, I thought they were both penalties, but I thought that Napoli's was more clear-cut. I thought between the two of them, I thought the foul...
I agree with you. I think Napoli's was more clear-cut too, yeah.
But the bit of getting the ball to Osimhen, I don't see the structure for it. Like, it's just like we're waiting for Politano or Insigne to make something happen. And maybe, to some extent, Insigne just isn't as good as he was a couple of years ago. I think I do feel that, if I'm being honest about myself. But maybe also there needs to be a bit more planning than that, especially when you get an opponent who do what Milan did and say, we're going to take out your middle three. We're going to put so much pressure on Lobotka, on Fabian, that they can't get the ball to Zielinski, who's also got someone treading on his toes. Now what's your plan? And I don't think the Napoli ever answered that question. And I feel like in some of the big games, they haven't really answered these questions. And even the game against Lazio, which they won in the previous round, where I was sort of encouraged to hail them and thought things have gone well, they're back in the title picture. In the end, it was wait for Fabian to do something magic, which he did. And I just worry. I mean, in some ways, God, have I not said the same things about Juventus and Max Allegri sometimes? Maybe it's good enough when your players are good enough. Like, if you can just keep it tight and wait for your good players to score a goal, pass the ball to LeBron James. But I don't know, it hasn't felt like enough for a little while, I think. And it's that disconnect in particular, because I'm still as high as I've ever been on Osimhen, but I think he's looked really isolated in some of these big games. And I think that's a problem that Spalletti hasn't fixed.
I think the issue here is that I agree with you. I think that when you are a Napoli side, you are going to be concerned more with your style of play than it is necessarily to neutralize the opponent, because that's the whole thing of having a philosophy, is that you value your philosophy and you need to make it the best that it can be. And that is also like something that I have with Ivan Juric, for example, Hellas Verona or whatever it is. They're not necessarily teams that plan so well for the opponent. And I feel like on this occasion, Spalletti definitely thought this was going to go differently. I think that he thought he was good. They were going to capitalize on, because he had mentioned that before on the fact that, Leao is really fast. So probably thought there'd be a few more man-yam passes over there, try to make it more of a counter-attacking team. I don't think he thought that he would use the midfield as well as he ended up using. And I think that for that, they do concentrate a lot on their beauty. And it's almost like they get carried away with it. But I still go back to the fact that they have enough individual quality and enough brilliance within that side to hold the ball, to push it further, and to take these players on. So I don't, we speak of tactical brilliance, but it really was like a Calabria weird sort of, shot that ended up with Giroud scoring the goal. I mean, there was obviously another opportunity for that as well. But in all of this, it not that they created anything special either, but Osimhen was always doing something. But this is the point. Osimhen, even when he is alone, even when it's just him stranded at the top, he is constantly looking for a route for goal. He is trying to create his own chances. And I don't find that the rest of the team do that. I feel like they suffer a mental collapse. And then when the pressure's on them to create something, they need the team tactics to push them through. Because on individual quality alone, it doesn't seem to come out there unless Fabian Ruiz is going to create something out of nothing like he did last week. This is what they don't have that perhaps other teams do have. Vlahovic can create a chance all by himself. There is individual quality, can resolve matches when tactics fail you. And I do think that you can see that sometimes with Zlatan Ibrahimovic as well at Milan, even though they're a team that rely heavily on tactics. But in terms of individual quality that just shines through and everything else, you've pretty much got Osimhen to depend on, and that's it. Otherwise, the team is very reliant on the way that they play their football. And if they make mistakes, then I think there's a problem there going forward. And you're right. I think when the tactics let them down, they don't necessarily know how to suffer through that. But this isn't the side for me. I don't know. I go back to the whole mental thing. But weirdly enough, this was the first time that Stefano Pioli had won against Spalletti after 12 attempts. So
right, ever. That's crazy.
Yay for him. I do feel bad for Spalletti because it was his 63rd birthday and it was a terrible loss for him. And just seeing him at the final whistle and the way that his head was down, I was just like, I don't know, And here we are, we're talking about Milan and all the brilliance of Milan. And this is another big match. The derby was a big match. Obviously, when Giroud resolved it in 3 minutes, this was a big match against Napoli. They're really proving themselves in all the big on all the big stages, but they're only 1 point more than they were last year. Can you imagine that? I thought they would be much further ahead than what they managed last year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird season. I think now the most points that anyone could get, and this is if they win every single game left, I think Inter can get to 91, which, given that's very unlikely, right? They're not going to win 10 games in a row. Suggests we're looking at a lower than usual 11 games. Sorry, it'd have to be. We're looking at a lower than usual points tally, or certainly lower than recently. I suppose. I think we've got quite used to really inflated points tally. It isn't the highest caliber in terms of like title race. In terms of there isn't a great team in the title race as there has been in some past seasons. It's a brilliant title race to watch because it's so close. I think it was really interesting actually because there was one of the things with this game is you always get this, everyone always does this in Italy, they always get nostalgic, but there's always the calls to the past. And of course, with this game, you can go back to 1988 and Maradona's Napoli getting beaten with 3 games left in the season by a Milan team with Van Basten and Hullet and Rijkaard in it. And you think, well, it was Sacchi's first Milan team. And you think, well, it's not bad. But this game still was really sort of, I don't know, it felt huge to me in terms of the build-up and the moment. And it's because it's been such a tight race. And I do want to sort of just quickly say, because I don't want us to get off this segment before we run out of time, whatever on it, but without saying it, it's just, maybe it's even emblematic of how weird the season has been that Olivier Giroud, who has scored in total 8 league goals for Milan. So it's not like he's gone there and he scored 100 goals, right? In fact, like when he went there and he took the number 9 shirt, there was this big conversation about the maledizione, that the curse of the number 9 shirt at Milan, which no one has scored more than, no one has hit double figures in Serie A while wearing the number 9 shirt for Milan since Simone Inzaghi. And he still hasn't done that. But he scored 2 goals to basically single-handedly win the derby against Inter when Milan played kind of rubbish. He scored the only goal here in a game where, as you said, there weren't that many good chances. Olivier Giroud is just like this sort of bizarre, defining outlier almost in Milan's season. He's good, and he's been, I actually felt kind of sorry for him because at the end of the game, he had a couple of weird interviews at the end of the game, but the DAZN interview with him started with, oh, now Ibrahimovic is back, who's going to start? And I thought, what kind of first question is that? Talking about the fact he's just won another huge game.
And he scored a goal away from San Siro, It was his first goal away this season.
Right, that's also true. But he was in his interview answer. He was like, oh, well, like I see myself as like a big brother to this team and everything, and my job is to help the young players a bit. And we've all sort of heard this story with him and Zlatan, they're there to help the young players, but also Giroud has scored some of the most important goals of this season, full stop now. And it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that if I was Napoli, maybe I would also look to maybe bring some veteran experience. There was something that Sacchi had said afterwards, and you know how I feel about Igor Sacchi and some of the comments that he makes, but I do see that it's a culture of winning.
Your fave.
Yeah, he's not my fave, but he was talking about the culture of winning, and it's just not something that's necessarily recognized in Napoli. And when I look at that team, I think of Koulibaly having won something, and Insigne obviously won the Euros as well. But you don't look at the side as one that understands what needs to happen or how to suffer necessarily for all the points. And I did think they turned a corner against Lazio. I had hoped maybe we might see something. But there's a part of me that thinks when they do recruit, there needs to be something done in terms of pace on the wings, players who can take players on, and just a culture of winning that they can introduce. And I think Osimhen's great at that, but he's the only one.
Mina, I've got in my head now, because we've already touched on Pjanic and we've touched on Sacchi. I'm asking myself, what is the best team that I could make of people that Mina hates? Like, what would be the best 11?
They're pretty good players, by the way.
And teams. So,
Dybala up front.
They could start with Sacchi on the bench.
Yeah.
Dybala up front. I've got Insigne in there. I've got Pjanic. I'm going to work on this.
Lukaku.
11 to torment you with. Yeah. It's a funny thing being at home. My mum's husband is a Liverpool fan who hates Mohamed Salah. Like, he keeps talking about how rubbish Mohamed Salah is. And I'm loving this sort of thing that everyone, even the fans of the biggest teams, have their pet hates. And
that's weird.
I'm going to make an 11 of players.
Yeah, Stevie Nichol's not a big fan of his either. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking that you could get far, but definitely Insigne will have a nice position in your team, potentially even the captain. I might even give you that. And once again, he doesn't come through and still talks about Napoli. Oh, why does he irritate me so much?
I'd like listener suggestions as well. Send me your Mina pet hate so I can make an 11.
Rabiot and Rugani as well. We haven't actually done this little segment for a while, but we do always want to say thank you for all your support. And we want to give a shout out to our new Chronicles Tifosi patrons who have supported us on this journey. So we just want to say a little thank you. And so we're gonna read out your names. I shall start with Richard Bold, Joseph Vernier, Roberto Versace. Is there a relation there to another Versace? And can I get some free stuff? And then Lee Colshaw, Jeffrey Garofalo.
Always looking for new sponsors.
Yes, we always are. Certainly if they want to send us any, safety pin dresses for free, not that I have any Oscars to go to, but, So that's Jeffrey Garofalo. And Shane Hurley. Over to you, Nikki.
And we've got Alex Lasher-Posner. We've got Rintel Saint, Anthony Lakasha, and Janet 319. I wanted to say a thank you as well to Patreon member Ben Woodham, who sent us some pictures, some photos they took from the Milan Inter game in the Coppa Italia at San Siro. They took a trip from London to watch the match, and the pictures are up on our social media channels. Ben, I'm so glad you got to go and do that.
Yeah.
And have a good time with it. We talked about stadiums, didn't we, recently, Mina? Like, there are so many great stadiums in Italy, but honestly, to anyone listening, if you haven't been to San Siro and you have the chance, do it while you still can, in case they ever get round to making a new venue, because it's such an amazing place to go.
Oh, it makes your spine chill. Join at patreon.com/Serie A Chronicles or go to our website at serieachronicles.com and click the link.
Lautaro 3-0 per l'Inter, ancora Lautaro, tripletta di Lautaro Martinez, 3-0 per l'Inter. E dai ragazzi che torniamo al gol, e torna al gol soprattutto Lautaro. Importante, adesso credo siano 14. Now
let's move on to our next match. I'm going to be honest with you. I was a bit low on Inter, and I didn't know whether it was, matchups against Genoa that made me feel sad about them or whatever it was, but it had to be the derby, because in the second half in the derby, I thought they were about to collapse, this is in the Coppa Italia. Inter just do not look to me like a team that was capable for this business end of the season. On a physical and mental level, they just looked exhausted. And I started thinking about whether or not they were missing Antonio Pintus, of course, the famous conditioning coach that was there under Antonio Conte, that was there for Real Madrid under Zinedine Zidane when they won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. And he's left. And I'm thinking, is that the difference? Are they just not athletically prepared for this? And then there was all these stats and figures on Simone Inzaghi and the fact that in the second half of the season, he does start to drop points. And they were wondering whether this is a trend that started. And then they took on Salernitana. I mean, it's probably worth mentioning they are rock bottom in Serie A, so it's not like they're facing, the world's greatest team. But it was an exuberant performance. It was really interesting to watch in the sense that it was Lautaro Martinez getting a hat-trick. It was Energeco getting a brace. It was finally them two scoring again in the same match since October. But most importantly, it was our Nico Barella, who was just outstanding and gives me great hope in us beating North Macedonia and getting through and possibly even defeating Portugal or Turkey to get a place in the World Cup if Barella performs like that.
See, you've turned it straight to Barella. I have to admit, my first thought was the most important thing for Inter, not for Italy, was it's just Lautaro, isn't it? He hadn't scored in 10 games, scored a hat-trick. Turns out, if your most important centre-forward doesn't score any goals for 10 games, it's quite a problem. And when he scores goals, things get a bit easier. It's so extraordinary, isn't it? I know it's Sassuolo, and they beat Sassuolo 5-0 last time around. And I was thinking, how often can that have happened, that you beat the same team 5-0 twice in one season?
Are you saying Sassuolo or you mean Salernitana?
Sorry, did I say Sassuolo?
Yeah.
I meant to say Salernitana. I don't know why my brain is on Sassuolo. I think because I was actually just reminding myself.
You love them so much.
Yeah, I do. I was just reminding myself of the games which they, because they've gone these 4 games without scoring a goal prior to this. And I was just reminding myself of who those opponents were, because of course it was Liverpool, Sassuolo, Genoa, and Milan. They didn't score in any of those games.
Yeah.
I think to some extent, like, this is one of those things that's been coming, right? Like, if you looked at the expected goals for those 4 games, it was extraordinary that Inter hadn't scored. But like, this is where we get into the sort of analytical reads, and it's a consistent theme of this season, for instance, that some teams, such as Milan, have performed a bit above their expected goals in every game. And Inter have clearly been hitting far below them for a while. And over the course of a season, and sometimes over the course of several seasons, you see some teams, actually Juventus is very good at this, overperforming consistently. And you think, well, it's not a chance anymore. It's to do with how you're creating those chances and who's on the end of them. But look, it is hard to know exactly what to make of it. Salernitana had been on a better run, but the quality gap is huge. And the question for me is less about this game. The question for me is, what does it mean for the rest of the season? I think it's interesting after the Milan game as well. You look at the remaining games that all of these teams have left until the end of the season. Actually, of the teams chasing the title, so Milan, Napoli, Inter, and even if you bring Juventus into that conversation, basically none of them play each other anymore except for Inter and Juventus. There's one game between those two and that's it. And you can get to the end of the season if you're Inter now, especially because they have got the game in hand that can put them back top, just by mostly beating teams you should beat. And this is a very encouraging sign if you can get back into this space where you will bulldoze a team that you should bulldoze. The worry for me is still, why do we go 10 games without a goal from Lautaro and then get 3 in a row? I mean, he's been streaky his whole time at Inter, but this season feels especially so. He's been absolutely on fire at times, but the dry periods have felt painful. So the question is this the start of another hot streak? And if so, how long does it last? And is it enough to get Inter across the line for me?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is a team that was averaging over 2 goals a game in the first half of the season, and now it's less than that. They had averaged 2.6 goals per game in the first half of the campaign, and it's gone down to I think 1.67 now in the second. And obviously that is, like you said, they went 4 matches without managing a goal. They are the team with the highest number of shots in the Champions League and with only 8 goals to show for it. And it's worth mentioning this is Salernitana, so you should be scoring 5 goals. I know that, obviously there's other teams that have made them look good, including Milan in their draw against them. But this was back to what I think is funny is that it's full circle, because Lautaro Martinez's last goal in Serie A was against Salernitana. And then we had that huge drought, 10 games overall, 8 in Serie A, in which he hasn't scored. And I do think that his movements have gone a little bit better. In the sense that I think that he's finding himself a little bit more as being a number 9 rather than always his movement. He has got such great technique on the ball. I knew he'd find his way through. Why I'm especially happy with Barella is because I'm somebody that believes your midfield wins everything rather than your anything else. Like, I don't care who you have up front. As long as your midfield works perfectly, like it does for Milan, that is what I put my money on. And I thought there was this really interesting story with Barella where midweek in training, he was really upset with himself. And he kept saying to his coaches, nothing's working out for me. Nothing's working out for me. I keep making everything bad. I keep delivering wrong passes. And Simone Inzaghi just kept saying to him, you've got this in the bag. Like, just trust yourself. And how the rest of the coaching staff were saying, just go back to basics. Just remember what it is you do and you don't need to be fancy. And so for him to have managed 2 assists and so many, important passes to the other goals, and he took part in all 5 goals. And on top of that, he was the best at the vertical balls, at taking shape of the game, really leading it through, tackling, winning back possession. That for me makes a huge difference because I think there's been a reliance on Brozovic a lot. So I need the others sometimes to step up in different matters. I also would like the team to be rotated a little bit more, but that's another thing. when it comes to going forward, I do wonder whether Dzeko and Lautaro are the best team. And then now there's all this talk of them potentially going for Dybala, who's another player that, like them, is somebody who's probably better at the overall creating and 9.5 role. I don't see Dybala. I mean, to me, he's a number 10. I can't see him as somebody, again, who's going to guarantee you goals the way that Lukaku was. And that's why I think they do need the Scamacca. They need that guy. And then lots of players to play off him. But I wonder what's going to happen there. And yet what worries me with Inter is now they'll face Liverpool. Let's be honest, it's probably not going to go so well because Liverpool are magnificent at the moment. And then is that going to have a psychological effect on them going forward in this title race?
It's so funny, isn't it? Because again, I've been spending time with my mum's husband, who's a Liverpool fan, and in his view, Liverpool are terrible at the moment. Nothing's going well for them. Mohamed Salah's awful, and they're going to fall apart. But no, I think it's a very big ask, isn't it? Even if Inter were playing at the absolute peak of everything, you wouldn't think they can go to Liverpool and win by more than 2 goals. It's just such a huge thing to ask. Do you know what I'm sort of I'm curious about with this Inter team right now? And I'd always love to see the Liverpool game used for this, because what else are you doing with that game if you expect to lose it? We finally got to see the first glimpses of Robin Gosens in that team, and they were encouraging, I thought. But you've got Ivan Perisic, who's already playing very well on the left of that formation. Is there a way that you can create an alternative formation that includes both of them together on that left-hand side? Is there a switch to a back 4 that you could have as a different option? Is there a way of having them stacked together on that left-hand side? And again, of all the games to try something in, the Liverpool game for me now is a free hit. There's no point going there doing the same thing you always do and just losing. So I'd love to see Inzaghi get creative at that game. I'd love to see him have a think about, like, what can I do that I haven't done so far? Because it's still the Champions League, right? I don't want to see Inter go there with an attitude of, oh, well, we've lost. Here's some teenagers from the youth team. I don't think they will. I don't think that will be the attitude. So if you're not going to do that, try something. Don't just go there and be bland. I'd really love to see them take some of that confidence from this game to go there and be ambitious and do something different. Because that's the one thing that you really sort of, if you want Inter to do well, domestically, my main interest is I'd love Inter and Napoli and Milan to all play great through the end of the season, and Juventus, so we have a great end to the season. In Europe, of course, I get to be a bit biased, and I want them to, I'd love them to give a good account of Italian football.
Of course.
And I'd love them to do that, being ambitious and different, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they showed us, like in the first half, they can be vertical. In the second half, they can use the full width of the pitch. They are tactically smart enough and versatile enough. I just want it to be even more unpredictable. So it's like you said, let's hope something happens. But there is another coach that I think that we've probably been a little bit harsh on. Or maybe we haven't. Yeah, I don't know. But I can't figure it out. This is where I can't figure it out. But we have to give a shout out to Roma.
Talk about.
Yes. I mean, we know it's Roma. They have beaten Atalanta yet again.
Ancora una volta Nicolo Zaniolo, il lancio è per lui, al limite dell'area, Zaniolo la ferma splendidamente, serve Ebram in area, Ebram ancora lui, Ebram! La Roma in vantaggio, esattamente al minuto 32, nel corso del primo tempo, cambia il parziale allo Stadio Olimpico di Roma, sull'asse Zaniolo, Tammy Ebram, la Roma ha costruito il gol dell'1-0, splendido, il lancio di Kastrop in profondità per il numero 22.
2 wins on the trot, 2 strong wins, despite the fact that Mourinho wasn't there in person because he's suspended. And I obviously, like him, wonder if they're better off without him. Joking. Stop taking this so seriously. But I'm going to say it was impressive because Tammy Abraham, 20th goal of the season. He is the top scoring Englishman right now. I mean, that's something to be super proud of. So they're definitely knowing how to bring the best out of him. Personally, my favorite player right now is Zalewski. I think he's fantastic on the left, like really fantastic. And for such a baby, he's doing magnificent things. Obviously, as is Zaniolo, and that perfect touch. So here's the thing, Roma can do this against a side that had, 65% possession, which is almost like, I feel like a guarantee. If Roma can get away with like 10% possession, they probably win 10-0. Yeah. I feel like this is the side that really doesn't care for possession. They care for the points. And they do have the individuals that can make the difference when the team tactics aren't necessarily on point. But is Roma now back in the race for the top four? And can they continue this going forward?
Oh, Mina,
is that too loaded?
Jump back to the Jose. Do you know what? Like, I'm not even disagreeing with you. They've gone 7 games unbeaten, which I think is
amazing.
Their best run since quite early in Fonseca's tenure. I mean, the Tammy Abraham thing is amazing because, as you said, he's the leading scoring Englishman in European football this season. I think he's the first 1 to 20 goals among English forwards, and he's also. I'm pretty sure he's a player who's hit the woodwork most in Serie A this season as well. So
you're right.
Even more with a bit of luck for Tammy Abraham. I really think that he's been brilliant, and kind of funny now that I think about it that it's 2 players discarded by Chelsea who've ended up being so impactful, and with him and Giroud in this Serie A season.
Does that say more about the level of Serie A than it does?
No, I don't know about that. I mean, we talked about Giroud. Giroud's a strange case because Giroud hasn't scored 20 goals. He scored 8. It just happens that they've been really impactful ones.
Yeah.
And look, Olivier Giroud has a World Cup winners medal and a Champions League winners medal, so maybe he knows a thing or two about big games. Tammy Abraham is just a player who I'm really happy got to have his chance. He's someone who I think in England, it felt like, or at least at Chelsea, wasn't getting that chance. I love it when players are brave enough to go outside their comfort zone. And I think he's found somewhere at Roma that it's clearly suited him, and he's really been able to make the best of himself. And, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because I was thinking to myself, I don't think of him in absolute terms in the category with your Vlahovic's, where I think, he's a really outstanding, going to set the world ablaze talent. But he's good. He's good. And I'd be really interested to see what he does with the rest of his career. Frankly, I think I'm curious to see if he plans to stay now at Roma and push on from here, if he's going to want to play Champions League football next season. As you said, I think they've opened the door for themselves to get back into that Champions League conversation. The reason that I would say no is actually not that they're not improving, because I think they are. But I think that the 4 teams that are in the top 4 now, I'm not sure I can see any of them letting slip enough to let Roma back in. None of them have been perfectly consistent, but the gap to the front 3 is quite wide. And Juventus are also trending in the right direction. Juventus are not losing games. And the less and less time you have left in the season, the more you need your opponents to really go off the boil to make that happen. So I think it's probably going to be too late to get into the Champions League.
Are Atalanta competitors?
I think the top 4 now is the top 4, is my opinion. I could be wrong. Of course, I'm wrong all the time.
If one was to drop out of this current top 4, would your money be on Lazio, Roma, or Atalanta?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Gosh, am I being a prisoner at the moment now? Because I'm a little bit inclined towards Roma. I was just so pleased with their performance this weekend. I really was. I thought there's been a lot of some of their results recently haven't been that impressive, right? There's been a bit of the digging out goals and results at the last minute, throw on the kids and something good happens. But this was genuinely a better performance. And maybe I'm being a prisoner of that moment, or maybe sometimes, as we do talk about in football, you need to get a few scruffy results to build the confidence. Then as you get the good results and start building into a really good direction. I don't know. Ask me again in I was going to say in 2 weeks' time, but why don't we just call it 10 and I can give you the answer?
You see, my money would be on Lazio because I think they were absolute tremendous against Cagliari. I think they're playing Sarri ball. I do love the fact that both of them have started to learn how to keep clean sheets. I mean, Lazio were a little bit of a disaster. Roma have kept 4 now in their last 7 matches. So certainly from a defensive point of view, we know Jose Mourinho can always figure it out on a defensive point of view. My worry with him was always going forward that he needed a little bit more individual quality than perfect tactics, let's say. But chapeau for the recent results. I do think that we should mention that Lazio was simply sublime. For our Patreon members, we're going to do a deep dive on Cagliari, just talk a little bit about them and obviously how their season is going. And so we'll look at that match as well as just how Cagliari have performed this season. So listen out for that. Has that made you at all think, like, look, they have Ciro Immobile, they have Luis Alberto doing something, just out of this planet. They have so many good players and they're now defending well. Surely Lazio can be a really scary unit if they actually invested a little bit more money.
It's probably a better 11 than Roma's. When I go through the 11 and I think about who they have, is it better or do I just believe in it more? It's an 11 that I buy into. He didn't actually have the best game this weekend, but I'm really enjoying Mattia Zaccagni. I think Felipe Anderson is starting to show us some of his best football again under Sarri, which is really exciting. Ciro is Ciro. He's always going to score goals for you, or at least he is in Serie A. Milinkovic-Savic is still there. Luis Alberto hasn't had the most prominent season under Sarri, but he had a good game at the weekend. There's a lot of talent there. There really is a lot of talent there, as we've seen before under Inzaghi. And I do have a soft spot for Sarri. I do. Me too. Despite myself sometimes. I do have a soft spot for him. And I think he's sometimes still doesn't get the credit for everything he's done in his career. So I don't know. Maybe. I think that race among those teams is really, really interesting. I think it will be fascinating to see who is the top out of those three, Atalanta, Roma and Lazio. I still think any of them is going to struggle now to get into the top four, because I think that top four is just that little bit stronger. And the teams that I look at and think, or the team probably that I look at in the top four and think is most vulnerable, which is Napoli, weirdly, because Napoli should be fighting for the title, but I just find them the least sort of
dependable.
The team I have least faith in. I can't see them dropping enough points to let one of those teams in, personally, even with some wobbles.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's largely because we haven't mentioned them, but Juventus managed to pull off another 1-0 victory, dull us all to boredom, but at least get the 3 points to continue their march going forward. Had this championship started from the 50, which is ridiculous because it's like saying if my granny had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. Do you remember that one? Anyway, but if it did, then they'd be at the top of the table. An interesting performance from them against Spezia, where Vlahovic didn't have a shot on goal and it was Morata who got the goal, and then they just defended like they know how. But I do want to give a shout out to Locatelli because I loved his performance in the first half when he was just allowed to be the player that he is, that pushes forward. But unfortunately, he didn't continue that. I don't know whether that was a choice by Allegri or done by him. I don't know, or because Spezia started to perform better in the second half, but it fell apart. Do Juventus scare you? 13 good wins in a row. Do they actually have a shot at the title? Surely they're too far away.
I just want to give a shout out to Mina's use of the word interesting to describe that game, because there are many words that I could have used to describe that game, and I'm not certain interesting was one of them.
Awful.
Oh my goodness. They are something, aren't they, Juventus under Max Allegri? But they win, and they are absolutely going in the right direction. No, I think they are. I think it's not implausible that they could win the league, but I think it's unlikely, because for Juventus now, if they won 10 out of 10 from here, that would get you to 83 points. I don't think you're going to get 10 out of 10 personally. And I think there's a very real chance that someone else finishes with more than 83 points anyway, because of these teams in the top four, there's only one head-to-head, which is Inter against Juventus. So actually, those are the two teams that've got to deal with that. I do think it's going to be a low points tally to win the league this season. Do I think it's going to be less than 83? Maybe it could be. But even then, do I think Juventus will win 10 out of 10? Probably not. So I think it's just a bit too late for them. But the form is there now, and it's very ominous Max Allegri football that you don't have to love it. It is effective.
Yeah, but they're a team that is still in the Coppa Italia. They're still in Champions League. They are still winning everything. They are a team that is not as topsy-turvy recently after they found their grounding. And maybe the reason for it is because they're so dull. So maybe this is a lesson to all of us. Be super dull, and you might just, manage some stability. But unless there's anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only other games I wanted to make sure got mentioned this week, Mina, Sassuolo winning 4-1 away to Venezia. I am a bit worried about Venezia and the way things are trending. But for Sassuolo, goals for all three of Berardi, Scamacca and Raspadori, which is fun. Right, there's your Italy attack for the playoffs. Don't worry about anything else for sure. And the other team I really wanted to give a special mention to this week, Mina, Genoa, who, since appointing Alexander Blessin, have not lost They've played 6 games. They haven't lost.
They haven't won either.
Won. They've drawn 6 out of 6, and they've scored 2 goals. They've had 4 0-0s and 2 1-alls. I kind of love it. I mean, I hate it. And as having sat through the full 90 minutes of Genoa against Empoli, I don't love it in a way of like I wouldn't recommend it. But how can you not respect that kind of consistency? I think it's amazing.
Find yourself a man who loves you as much as Genoa love a draw.
Guys, that's all we've got time for this week. We're going to be back on Friday with our Chronicles Q&A mailbag show. We'll be back during the week with, as Mina mentioned, a Patreon special talking about Cagliari. Check out our website at serieachronicles.com and click that Chronicles Tifosi button to join our Patreon community and get access to exclusive episodes like that and other bonus content. You can also send us a voice message now as well for our Q&A episodes via the website. So check that out at serieachronicles.com as well. Find us on Twitter at serieachronpod, at Nikki Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and subscribe to the Serie A Chronicles YouTube channel for clips of the show. Hope you've had fun this week. I have, and we'll see you guys real soon. Bye.
Quindi la palla schizza a Mauro che mette subito il movimento Maradona, contropiedi Maradona, pallonetto e terzo gol del Napoli. Ha segnato Maradona, 38esimo minuto e mezzo del secondo tempo. Maradona ha segnato il terzo gol del Napoli, ormai c'è il suggello alla vittoria del Napoli, al primo posto del Napoli. Ecco Maradona che si lascia andare anche a un po' di emozione addirittura.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.